All right, now I don't find it particularly satisfying just to select something and be done with it, which is why in this movie we're going to put the selected object to work by transforming our isolated diver into this super diver complete with a jet trail. All right, so I'll go and switch back to the composition from the previous movie, and I'll turn the background back on here inside the layers panel. And then I'll jump a copy of the Colleen layer just by pressing Control J here on the PC or Command J on the Mac. Now I'll rename the original layer Jet Trail because that's the purpose it's going to serve. And then I'll right click on the thumbnail for the layer mask, this guy right here. And once again, my layer thumbnails are nice and big because I right clicked in this empty area below them and chose large thumbnails. In any event, I'm going to right click on the thumbnail for this layer mask for the jet trail layer and choose apply layer mask in order to actually apply it to the image. So in other words, if I were to alt or option click on the eye in front of the jet trail layer, you can see that I've permanently deleted the masked pixels. And that will allow me to convert the remaining pixels into a jet trail. And so I'll alt or option click on that eyeball once again with the jet trail layer selected. You want to go up to the filter menu, choose blur, and then choose motion blur. And in the case of this image, I set the angle value to 90 degrees, so straight up and down, and I set the distance to 400 pixels, at which point I'll click OK to accept that change. Now notice that the motion blur goes in both directions. I want it to go strictly down, and so I'll go up to the edit menu and choose free transform, or you have that keyboard shortcut of Control T here on the PC or Command T on the Mac. Then go over to this Y value, click at the end of it. So after the X that stands for pixel, and then enter plus 200. Why 200? Because that's half of the size of the 400 pixel motion blur. And then I'll press the enter key or the return key on the Mac a couple of times to apply that change. All right, now I want to goose things up a little bit by adding an outer glow. And so I'll click on the FX icon down here at the bottom of the layers panel, and I'll choose outer glow. And then notice that I set the color to the shade of blue right here, light shade of blue with a hue value of 200 degrees. Both the saturation and brightness values are 70%, at which point click OK. I crank the opacity value up to 100%, set the blend mode to screen as by default, and I crank the size value up to 50 pixels. At which point I'll click OK to accept that change. And now I'll change the blend mode for the jet trail layer by clicking on the word normal right here and switching it to the brightest mode there is, linear dodge in parentheses add. And we end up with this effect here. Now, I also want an outer glow around Colleen, so I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and drag outer glow. And notice because I have the Alt or Option key down, I'm seeing a double arrow icon, at which point I'll go ahead and drop it onto the Colleen layer so that I'm creating a copy of that outer glow effect. And now I'll double click on the new one up here at the top of the stack, and I'll crank the size value up to 2 times 50. So I'll just enter *2 like so, and that will take that size value up to 100 pixels. And then I'll take the opacity value down to 20%, and then I'll click OK. All right, now the only thing that's still bugging me at this point is that I didn't select Colleen's hand properly. And so what I want to do is get rid of this little region of blue right here. And so notice that my object selection tool is still active over here in the vertical toolbox, and that its behavior is set to lasso up here in the horizontal options bar. At which point I'll make sure that the layer thumbnail is selected. You don't want the layer mask to be active. So go ahead and give that full color thumbnail a click, and then drag around this region like so in order to select it. Now, in my case, that ends up selecting into the hand a little bit. I don't want that, so I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, at which point I'll see a minus sign next to my cursor, and I'll drag around that area like so. And then I want to add a little bit more down here, so I'll press the Shift key. So I'm seeing a plus sign next to my cursor, and I'll go ahead and drag around these pixels like so. Might add just a little more, so I'm shift dragging once again. That looks good. Now I'll click on the layer mask thumbnail to make sure it's active. You want to tap the D key in order to establish the default foreground and background colors, which when working with the mask are white for the foreground and black for the background. And then you want to fill the selection with black by pressing Control Backspace here on the PC. That's Command Delete on the Mac. After which point, you can press Control D or Command D on the Mac in order to deselect the image. And now I'll switch to the full screen mode by pressing Shift F, and I'll press Control 0 or Command 0 on the Mac in order to center my zoom. And that is at least one way to put a selected object to work here inside Photoshop 2020.